Hi everyone, I'm Nandini Malhotra, your host for the podcast Server Room. Welcome back to another episode where we have Sharada Murthy here with us. She's a product marketer at Manage Engine and she works a lot with partners day in and day out. So Sharada, how was the partner meet? It just got over in Jan, so I'm sure it must be very hectic for you.
Hi, Nandini. The party meet was very exciting. It's one of my favorite ways to start the year. It's something that I look forward to every year. And this year, no surprises. It was very, very exciting.
So, what all do you handle for partners?
Okay, so I started off as a product marketer, but I predominantly work with partner marketing at this point of time.
Okay.
And everything from educating them, helping them with resources, aiding them with content or campaigns that specifically work for their region, helping them, onboard new people, educating those folks are predominantly segments I work with.
Okay.
But I also have a lot of fun learning from them as well because it's a very exciting space.
Right. So, is it all through the globe? Do you handle partners all through the globe? Or do you
Pretty
handle?
much. So I would say, depending on how our partner network is, I predominantly focus on partners, let's say, all the way from Australia, ANZ, uh, all the way to Latin America.
Okay.
And for
okay.
direct markets where we still have transactional partner, that is not in my purview, but everything else, yes, pretty much.
Okay, that's nice. So, any interesting stories you can share with the
Quite,
viewers?
quite a lot, quite a lot. Like I said, when everybody flies down to India in the first week, in the first month of the year, right? It's very very exciting to have all of them here and you know get to meet everybody in my home. That is one of my highlights of the year, if I can say that again.
Okay.
And having them here and understanding what the year has been like for them, what to look forward to this particular year, strategizing with them on what's going to work out for us this year, what we need to be prepared for from the technical aspect of things are all lessons or exchanges we usually have on an annual basis, and we start the year on that note. So the year is off on
to a
a
good start.
yeah, and then it's just a lot of work and a lot of exciting collaboration.
Okay, that's nice. That's very interesting. Any particular instance you can talk about, like where you've had conversations with a lot of partners, and I'm sure maybe the customers as well, or no?
Customers usually along with the partners, but mostly just partners.
Okay, done. All right. So, zero trust is something that is very common these days and it's a huge buzzword. So, how do you ensure all of the customers of Manage Engine as well as the partners' customers? How do you ensure that zero trust is enabled for all of them without a lot of friction?
Right. I'm somebody who strongly believes that user identity is the core of zero trust. So, irrespective of what your ecosystem is like, this is the narrative that we share with partners as well. So, when I say user identity, it is basically giving users the luxury of, being able to verify their identity without bothering them too much with the fatigue of having to do that time and again. So giving them a seamless experience is very, very important. And that is something we definitely preach. That is something that we definitely aim to head towards. And interestingly, with the evolution of uh, technology, we're working towards multi-factor authentication, which is adaptive. We're working with authenticators that weigh in the risk factor. So that would definitely be my recommendation at this point of time.
Okay, done. So, what about cybersecurity? Do you think having collaboration with partners in the data is needed at this time of the day, or do you think having a single entity, managing cybersecurity for an organization is the better way to go?
All right. So when we work in the B2B space, initially when we started out, we were able to penetrate regional markets only because of our partners, because they understand it better than anybody else.
Right.
So that is fundamentally how we started out. Just like how we hail from India and we understand this regional market a lot better than
Of course, it's something you can relate to.
right.
Yeah.
Uh, that is a dynamic that I definitely enjoy. There's a lot of learning there. So I feel like partners are definitely needed to crack that particular space. But it's a very, very evolving, actively evolving space. So I don't think one system can fit, because I'm talking about global partners. I don't think one system can fit every country, every region. It's a very exciting dynamic space. So there are we are actively moving towards centralized SOCs that actually help us or organizations manage,
Okay.
and we actively collaborate with SOCs as well. So through the partners or otherwise, it is something that we are actively exploring. We have been exploring for quite some time. So I would say it all works out, but it has to, you know, be customized regionally or depending on the market or the audience that we are reaching out to.
Right. So, how do you handle all of these cultural differences? You just mentioned that you work with partners all across the globe. So, maybe when, we start working with them initially, like the initial days must be a little difficult for you to understand the cultural differences.
Yeah. So I'm somebody who gets very excited by it.
Okay.
When we started out, or when I started out, which was about 6, 7 years back, that was my first experience interacting with partners.
Okay.
My preparation was all about product and product marketing and what I have to offer,
Okay.
which I think transitionally changed, because one of my biggest learnings is that emotional intelligence, the emotional connection that you build with the partner, uh, which might not be spoken about very often, is the fundamental to how good a relationship you have with somebody and how that relationship can transform to phenomenal business. So I understand we're talking technology, I understand we're talking money and business, but that is one of my greatest learning. And the cultural difference is, the way I look at it, or the way, in my experience, in my very humble experience, I think there's a lot of learning with the cultural differences as well. Because one of the cute things that I see a lot of partners do is taking an effort to say "vanakkam" in Tamil, right? Every time they come here, and I've seen a lot of my teammates. I do that too, to try and understand their culture, try to communicate with them in their regional language. At least a hello, hi, welcome, um, in the regional language is something that I see a lot of people do, and these are tiny, cute things that add a lot of value to the kind of relationship that you're looking forward to build.
Right. So, do you know any other languages other than English, Tamil? Do you know any like foreign languages?
English is the only foreign language I know, but I've somehow managed to say hola and ciao, and a couple of words here and there because I have interacted with partners.
Okay.
I'm not the best at learning new languages. Very, I would very shamelessly admit to it. But thankfully, I've had very, very kind partners who've been okay with me communicating in a language that I'm very comfortable with. But someday, I think if I had an option to master some language, I would definitely try and learn Spanish, Italian, Portuguese,
Okay.
and see if I can communicate with partners in those languages.
Nice. That's good. That's good. So, what is the most common security mistake that you see people doing?
Right. I do not know if it's common anymore, because we come from a generation which is predominantly digital at this point of
Yeah.
time. So I don't know how many of us still use pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
But a cybersecurity mistake that I feel that I don't have an answer to even today, and I've been speaking about this for almost 8, 9 years now,
Yeah.
is people writing down passwords in pen and paper.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I've seen my father do it,
Okay.
and it's something that a lot of system administrators also
Yeah.
still predominantly use when somebody's onboarded. Sometimes the password is written down in a sticky note and passed on to them. How do you stop that? How do you
Yeah.
detect it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It still puzzles me, but it's very exciting. That's a quirk that people still have. They're still very comfortable doing that, but I hope they don't.
Okay. So, do you see it around the laptops or devices, or is it like somewhere
Sometimes,
stashed?
yes. If I have to be really honest, yes.
Okay. Okay. Done. So, I'm sure there will be a lot of organizations where different people have different access to different files in the organization and their data. So, how do we handle these, access based rules and without the company or the people who are managing it, without them getting overwhelmed?
Um, there's no easy way to do it. Let's start there. And in my experience of working with technicians, system administrators, IT managers, I don't think they're looking for a fix. I don't think they're looking for one solution that can help them do that, because that's not how the cybersecurity world works. And coming to terms with that, I think, is having acceptance of the fact that when it comes to access to devices, applications, I like to call it checkpoints, because that it's varied, right? It can be an authenticator that's a hardware, it can be a device, it can be access to the network. There are different checkpoints in which you have to verify your identity, or you need access to, based on how your day-to-day work is, right, as a user. So um, having access to these checkpoints or applications or devices cannot be a one size fits all. It cannot be one rule. It cannot be a singular task, even for an IT administrator. It has to be something that is periodically reviewed. It has to be something that is monitored, of course. But having a review system and being able to revoke access based on least privilege is something that I would highly recommend. So it can be overwhelming only if you are looking at it. I mean, you're possibly just starting out and looking at it as, um, let me create groups, let me create segmentation, and then I forget about it. Yeah. That's not how the cybersecurity world works. It's fast evolving. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think anything in the cybersec world can be, static.
Yeah.
Everything, I'm sure, every day changes, like even if it's 1%, but the impact that 1% might have on the organization's security will cost them a lot.
Absolutely.
Could be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So I feel like having granularity in how you segregate your user groups is something that will definitely help.
Okay.
And management is something that we have to definitely pay a lot of attention to. So when I say access management, having smaller groups, having groups based on not just organizational roles or departments, but getting into the nuances of application level access, device level access, device trust. These are all things that will definitely help.
Okay.
And that granularity, along with continuous monitoring and a review and approval system for continuing to have access or revoking access, is, I think, a necessity in today's day age and time.
Okay. So granularity you mentioned is based on what?
Right. So most organizations that I've worked with try to segregate users into departments. But when I say user, and I work with a lot of users, I work with password management tools, I work with user provisioning tools. So when I say users, it does not have to be categorized based on only the department that you come from, or the country that you come from. These are definitely categories that work, and these are bigger groups. And I agree that it works when you're having a policy that fits a majority of people. But when we look into, when I say granularity, I mean, let's say there's a sales team. Not every sales manager requires administrative level access to a particular sales application, right? That is also access management. Not every person in the organization requires privileges to be able to access the printer or access particular flows that have servers. So when I say privileges, I don't always mean people that come with that sort of a designation or that sort of a role. I also mean privileges in a way uh, that is in tandem to access itself. So not everybody requires permissions to be able to modify certain values in a particular application. So that is what I mean by granularity. And you can have smaller groups, very specific groups, based on access that you give to applications, access that you give to in an application itself. Different levels of access that you give can be a lot more granular.
Got it. Got it. Understood. So, I'm sure there would be a lot of shared intelligence that we would have as an organization or any organization in particular. So, for you particularly, I want to ask this question. Do you have any interesting stories where shared intelligence helped stop something crucial, like an attack or a threat? Right. Probably. Yeah.
I'll take an example of our organization itself. This is the first story that's coming to my mind. I think this was about 8.5 years back.
Okay.
I was fairly new to the organization, and we are people who insist on having our security and privacy training even as we're onboarded to the organization.
Yeah.
Um, that is something that's very interesting because there was a huge, so we were testing an application and there was a huge password reset email trigger that reached every single employee at that point of time. Surprisingly, there weren't as many password resets because as users, as employees of this particular organization, we were very well informed and aware of what link this is triggered from, what email this is triggered from, and whether we have to access that secure link and go ahead with the password reset. Right? This is something that seems very straightforward, but when I say shared intelligence, because the mass uh, was aware, very, very well educated about what to expect when there is a password reset email that is triggered, we were able to avoid that particular mass password reset request or the system administrators being bombarded with password reset tickets at that particular incident. And I'm not sure how many people know about this. I'm not even sure, if I'm legally allowed to say this on a podcast. But see, that's the interesting thing about shared knowledge, shared intelligence is that, and for somebody like me who has the privilege of interacting with partners on a day-to-day basis, this is also something I get to learn from them. Regional uh, trends, regional hacks, regional customer experiences are also something that I get to learn. Okay. And this is one quick example that I can think of. So employees in our organization understand the security posture that we adapt to, understand what privacy is, understand phishing scams. And I'm sure we are constantly attempted with it on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. But somehow we we know what to do.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. So, I'm sure every company has that one app that doesn't really play nice with modern logins and, let's say, multi-factor authentication. So, how do you handle this? And how do you handle this conversation with partners or, let's say, customers on a day-to-day basis? Like, how do you initiate this? And I'm sure they would be refusing to, update their systems and all that because it is a pattern that they've been always dealing with, and it's convenient for them. So change, I think, is very difficult for everyone. So how do you deal with this? How do you handle this conversation?
Firstly, make peace with it.
Mhm.
Uh, as somebody who works with Active Directory, this is something this is a line I use when I present.
Yeah.
I literally say, Active Directory is older than me.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
And we still predominantly use Active Directory. That's one of the example of a legacy directory service, right? The idea is not to convince partners or customers to navigate to another application just because they support technology that's a lot more modern. In today's age and time, we have a lot of applications. We have identity providers that help you with modern authentication while still being able to integrate with legacy systems. That is definitely an option. Since I spoke about Active Directory, federated services is something that we can still very much rely on if it's compatible. And we're talking about APIs today. So API is also an easy way to ensure that the legacy system is somehow able to integrate with another application, another authenticator, another technology, where the modern authentication techniques still work while giving users access to what they're comfortable with, what they've been using for 25, 30 years.
Okay. So I think digital maturity is that comes in here because I'm sure most of the apps that are getting developed today might not be compatible with the ones that were there before, like let's say all of these legacy systems. So I think the more digitally mature your apps or let's say systems are, I think the better it is for any organization.
But that circles me back to the point that you said change sometimes is difficult. So even we come from a modern organization, we still use legacy systems. So striking a right balance and taking a hybrid approach for the time being, I think makes sense. But eventually, of course, whatever works for that particular organization, whatever works for that particular partner, that particular ecosystem is definitely more is advisable rather than trying to fit everybody into a system that is recommended, that is working for us.
Correct. Yeah. Completely agree. What about password sync versus password pass through? So, what is this difference between each? If you can, like, just probably tell us. And what would you advise people to, or let's say a company to use if they're just starting the cloud journey?
Okay. I will start with answering the first half of your question. So when I say password synchronization, what I'm essentially doing is that for a particular user A, if the password is XYZ, I'm making sure that any application that the user has access to, the password remains to be XYZ. Okay. For somebody who's starting out on their cloud journey, for somebody who has limited users, limited application, password sync is definitely something that they can consider. Okay. Um, but like I said, I'm somebody who very strongly believes that the technology that you have, the applications that you have, is very, very personal. Um, it is as personal as the IT director in your organization at that point of time. Right. This is something that I've come to terms with, because if your IT director changes, if your system administrator changes, there's a possibility that the application also changes, because um, it's what fits best for that particular organization, right? So customization is key. And when I talk about pass through, what it essentially does is that there is a single authentication source, a common authentication source. For example, Azure Connect is a pass through tech. So, what happens in that particular case is that when a particular user, let's say A again, has access to multiple applications, the credentials is not duplicated. So, there can be different passwords, but the authentication mechanism is through the Azure in this particular case. So if XYZ is the password for Azure, and on entering the credentials of your Azure account, you will have access to other applications. Um, it's very similar to single sign on in terms of uh, how the access is granted, because the authentication source is one, it's common. But single sign on is a lot more modern with how many applications it has access to. Pass through is more specific to the Microsoft ecosystem, very, very specific to Active Directory in Azure. So if you are completely Microsoft ecosystem based, then pass through might work for you and work really well for you. If you have moved to the cloud and you have multiple applications, multiple directories that don't predominantly work on the Microsoft ecosystem, then a good combination of single sign on along with MFA with an identity provider is something that is definitely recommended.
Okay, okay, done. So, as a woman in tech, I know this might sound a little cliche, but I really want to know your views about this. As a woman in tech, how has your journey been? Was it a cliche answer or is it something different?
I take a lot of pride in being a very honest person. And irrespective of my gender, I think we might have challenges along our way. Um, has it been easy? Is it very straightforward? Because I'm a girl, because I'm a woman in technology? The answer, even today, has to be no. But I thankfully have amazing support system even at work. I come from a team that recognizes me for who I am. I come from an organization that I take a lot of pride in, an organization that definitely empowers us. And here we are, two women having a chat on a tech podcast. So um, it is definitely, there is a lot of scope to empower a lot more people, a lot more women in particular. Um, the journey is definitely going to have a lot of ups and downs, but go for it. Go for it is what I would tell myself, what I would tell others as well. Once again, I'm somebody who's very cognizant of not bringing the gender element. I don't believe in cliches. But everybody's journey can have challenges. I've also had challenges, but thankfully, I'm here. I will still continue to be here.
That's good. That's really nice. I hope we get you on another podcast very soon. And okay, so if you look back on your journey, do you have any advice that you would probably tell your younger self to do something different and still be here where you are?
Okay. I strongly believe that who I am right now is based on not just my experiences, but also the people that I've met.
Yeah.
And there is somebody that I definitely look up to, a woman in tech. I had a fantastic opportunity of interacting with her last year for a Women's Day program. We were called forward to be facilitated because women in tech.
Okay.
And one of the things that she spoke about in her speech, something that stuck with me, something that I resonate with a lot, and something that is definitely an advice I would tell not just my younger self, but a lot of women out there who are starting out who have inhibitions, is to ask for what you want.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to get what you want.
Okay.
So if you want something, it's not just about you putting in the effort and chasing it, but it's also being very verbal about what you want and where you're headed in your journey, in your career. And I think this is something that a lot of people will resonate with. If you ask for what you want, it's easy for um, your manager to understand, your team to understand where you're headed. And I think that can make a lot of difference. It can help you get things a lot more easily than, complicating the whole situation.
Correct. Yeah. So this calls for a lot of clarity in what you want as well. Only then you'll be able to ask what you want. Yeah. I think that is needed for everyone in their career early on. Yeah. So how do you see like strategic partnerships evolving in the next, like, let's say 5, 10 years?
Okay. This is something I spoke about when we started out, right? Initially, as a B2B organization, we were trying to reach other businesses. And then that's when we realized that regionally there are a lot of challenges. We collaborated with partners. Today, 25 years, we have partners who've been with us for 20, 25 years. And so that ecosystem becomes business to business via a partner or a regional partnership, right? The way I see it evolving, um, actively evolving, and I'm seeing that change happen drastically over the last couple of months, is that there are a lot more partnership. So partnerships is categorized based on how you collaborate with a partner as a vendor, right? I see all of that coming together. So when I spoke about a SOC, or when I speak about partners just transactionally selling to customers, or when I talk about MSPs, I talk about system integrators. These are all different segments that we have partnerships with. I see all of this coming together in the partnership space. So this is something that I've actively been observing the last couple of months, the last couple of years, and I see we're headed towards a place where cross collaboration is going to be uh, required, necessary, because when we talk about regional business, when we talk about the partnership space, it's not going to be as straightforward as vendor, partner, customer.
Yeah.
It's going to have system integrators, implementation specialists coming in, um, engineering specialists coming in.
Okay.
So I see that cross-functional collaboration actively changing in the strategic partnership space.
Okay, that's interesting. So as you mentioned, there are partners you've been working with for the last 20, 25 years who've been associated with this company. So how do you ensure that us as an organization and them, we see value in the relationship, even though like everything else is evolving? Like tech has evolved so much in the last 20, 25 years. So how do we ensure, or let's say how does the partner ecosystem ensure that both of the companies involved, they do see value in the relationship and continue to be together?
Okay. The practical answer to this is the zeal for the technology and the advancements in technology, and how uh, most partners that we collaborate with are very proactive when it comes to pushing the products that we work with get to where it needs to be to still survive in a very, very competitive space regionally, right? So there's a lot of feedback, there's a lot of collaboration that's happening. Um, but the core is the culture. We have collaborated with amazing partners. Uh, so it's not a transactional relationship. When they come here, it's almost like, you know, them visiting their second home. And this is something I hear quite a lot. A lot of partners come to Chennai in January and they talk about how Chennai is their second home. And that's such a pleasant way to look at the city and Zoho and the culture that we have here. So uh, that is something that I think is the core of why we do what we do and how well we do it. But they play a huge role in how well we do it. So when it comes to technology, it's about being able to adapt quickly, but at the same time not lose essence of where you're headed. Because there's going to be a lot of influences on where we can be, how the product evolves. Um, so sticking to your core of what the product has to deliver, but at the same time, being open to ideas, being open to customization to survive the competitors in your local market is something that we actively work on, from engineering all the way to support.
Got it. Got it. So, if let's say you had the power to change something globally in the cybersec space, um, what do you think everyone in the like across the globe should probably change? So,
Um, okay, this is a quote that my life partner and I resonate with quite a lot.
okay.
We talk about how it's not about doing extraordinary things. It's about doing the ordinary things for an extraordinary period of time. This is something that came to us and we resonate with this quite a lot.
Okay.
And I feel like that also beautifully stands with Zoho as a culture.
Right.
We've been doing ordinary things, but for an extraordinary period of time. So I don't think we can change things up in the cybersecurity space um, overnight. It's a constant effort. It's going to be a lot of effort and constant evolution. It's going to be a lot of change, adapting to new threats that we come across on a day-to-day basis, and ensuring that we evolve along with the product and not stick to technology that's ancient. We don't become legacy systems. So education is something that I would definitely uh, prioritize, being able to upskill and understand what the uh, how the cybersecurity space is evolving, how the threats are evolving, what the technology is behind, and how do we stop it from affecting us is something that I definitely um, want every single person that works in the cybersecurity space to focus to. That is also my personal goal. But that said, if we're talking superpowers, then possibly um, I'm a very dreamy person. I'm a Piscean. So I would definitely say having the superpower to be able to potentially detect threats, right, before it attacks us. So we know what to do to mitigate these threats, how to not be under attack. Because I think it's at this point of time, we're talking about multiple attacks every second. Um, Susceptible to being prey to attacks every second as organizations globally, right? So the volume of attacks have drastically increased. But if you're able to foresee what's coming, if that's a superpower that IT admins can have, then I think it would be fantastic. And coming back to my previous point of having the superpower to allow people to possibly, not write down passwords anymore, lock their application, devices before they walk away from their desks, not allow your team or your colleagues to play pranks, because your system is not logged, are all things that we definitely need to focus on, because we're talking about a very, very actively evolving threat landscape.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I think kudos to us because I think this is the first episode we've shot in a very long time where we've not talked about AI at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about AI?
I mean,
Everybody's talking about AI.
yeah, it is. It is quite. I think it's part of every conversation any person in the technology landscape talks about. But regarding your threat detection and how you can foresee, I think AI would be helpful.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. So we have been detecting threats, but we've been doing that based on user behavioral patterns and with machine learning. AI, I would say, is the next step to being able to do it, because we have gathered a lot of data based on user behavioral patterns. What we're doing next is also understanding what's available and then being able to predict. And that's where, when I say prediction, when I say superpower, I think that's where AI can definitely add value. It does not have to be a ideology. It's something that's very, very practical.
Correct. Yeah. So any trends or technology that you're really excited about to see this year?
Practically, as a product marketer, I'm looking forward to being able to troubleshoot issues on a product level with AI because we spoke about AI. So, AI chat support is something that's actively expanding.
Yeah.
And that is something that I'm looking forward to this particular year. But we spoke about attacks, we spoke about threat, we spoke about user identity and access management. I feel like AI or generally user behavior can definitely be the underlying study to how an application reacts. So,
Okay.
allowing applications to be able to, give you alerts, be able to give you notifications based on behavioral patterns, based on not just user behavior in your organization, but study recorded globally can definitely make a huge difference. And Not talking about AI, something that I'm definitely very excited about is integrations, customization. We're talking about Manage Engine venturing into the platform space very actively. I also see a huge shift in perspective of how our products are evolving. Okay. And how adaptable we're going to be very, very soon. So that excites me a lot. That is something that I'm actively working on and something that I'm looking forward to.
That's great. That's really nice. I think it's going to be a very exciting year for everyone in the tech space. Perfect. So, this brings us to the end of our podcast, and it was lovely having you here. I'm sure we would have a lot of other conversations on the podcast as well as offline as well. So, thank you, everybody. And this is Sharda and Nandini signing off. Thank you.
Thank you so much.